Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting. It is Monday, September 19th, 2016. It is now 8:30. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to have Selectman Cartier lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Cindy. Next item on the agenda is public forum, limited to 3 minutes on any agenda item. And I see we got a packed house, standing room only. So I'm going to ask you all to please limit your remarks to 3 minutes and to 3 minutes only so that we could hear everybody. So I'll start with, please give your name and address, please. Please sit here and talk into the mic so we can get you on GCTV.
Good morning. My name is Patricia Kleindienst. I live at 295 Clabbert Hill Road. My husband, Louis Makel, and I have been Guilford residents and business owners for more than 30 years. I hereby present each of you with a copy of a petition of over 300 signatures of residents and taxpayers from every part of Guilford, which are collected over the last 72 hours. Of particular importance is the fact that many supporters of the Shoreline Greenway Trail have signed this petition. They have signed it because they believe that the process for considering the Greenway Trail should be open and democratic. We would like you to consider the concerns of the undersigned petitioners, and here are our concerns. We, the undersigned residents and taxpayers of Guilford, oppose the building of any segment of a greenway or a bikeway through Guilford until there is a publicly available plan, including a map of its route for the entire length through Guilford, from Madison to Brantford, approved by the Guilford Board of Selectmen. This plan must include detailed elevations, maintenance requirements for both the town and the adjacent landowners, as well as a budget for building and maintaining the bike path long-term. The Shoreline Greenway Trail concept is for a publicly funded project that will ultimately become the responsibility of the taxpayers of Guilford. We believe that the public should be thoroughly involved in the process and that written approvals be obtained from all landowners whose property the trail would cross before any approvals are granted by the town. We oppose any plan that does not contain an explicit disavowal of resort to eminent domain for the taking of private property or expansion of paved surfaces of public roads without the express written permission of affected property owners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. My name is Jack Hoyt. I live at 986 Leeds Island Road. I'm here on behalf of a group, as a spokesman for our group, which we've called Save Our Shoreline. I'd like to read a statement. This is our position statement on the so-called Greenway Trail. We are Save Our Shoreline, SOS, a group of Guilford residents and taxpayers from various geographic areas of the town. All of us are signatories to the petition which is before you today. Several hundred other Guilford residents have signed the petition as well, including those from the section under consideration today. We are strongly opposed to the project, which has euphemistically been called Shoreline Greenway Trail, or the SGT. In reality, it's a project which intends to install asphalt sidewalks and boardwalks through our neighborhoods and pristine marshes, wetlands, and waterways. We vehemently object to the manner in which the government of the town of Guilford has handled this matter to date. In its essence, this is a private project of SGT, which should, by law, be submitted for approval by our Board of Selectmen and our Planning and Zoning Commission. Impartial, independent decisions should be made by both bodies after giving Guilford taxpayers notice of the hearings and after seeking and obtaining public input for these hearings. Instead, it's our feeling that the SGT application has perverted the democratic process in our town. Under the radar, unannounced meetings in violation of our state's Open Public Meetings Act have taken place again and again to further the application. Our town engineer and his assistant have been provided at taxpayer expense to formulate and fine-tune a privately motivated project. Whereas the BOS and the P&Z are required by law to be neutral arbiters of such land use applications, we perceive that instead they have become the confederates of the applicants themselves. They have become the deciders of their own application. The SGT website brags, quote, "The town's Board of Selectmen and SGT members agreed this year to begin preparations to build the Greenway. We are grateful to First Selectman Joe Mazza for his support and to Guilford Town Engineer Jim Portley, who has worked closely with SGT leader Milton Charlton on the design of the plan. When was such an agreement made, and why were we not told of it in advance? Why is our town engineer designing an applicant's plan? This is wrong. The collusion is against the law, and the process must be abandoned. Connecticut law requires all municipal meetings to be open to the public, and the law has been repeatedly violated here. It seems that the secret behind-the-scenes planning of this project is illegal. Connecticut law requires that written individual meeting notices be given by the town to landowners whose property is directly affected by changes such as those proposed. It appears that that legal requirement was ignored as well. We call upon our Board of Selectmen to vote against this initiative. If the SGT wishes to pursue its initiative by lawful means, it has that right. However, this secretive and illegal process must be stopped now. The approval must not be granted. Respectfully, save our shoreline.
Thank you.
Could we get a copy of that
Yeah.
for the record?
I do, thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Nona Bloomer, retired historical room and reference librarian, 988 Leeds Island Road. We strongly protest both the tactics and the program of the Shoreline Greenway Trail, SGT in Guilford. We live at 988 Leeds Island Road and own the property on both sides of Route 146. This expanse of Route 146 is a historic district listed in the National Register of Historic Places and a state scenic highway. The adjoining wetlands are a dedicated conservation area. The directors of the SGT, as early as 2006, never informed us of their map showing several proposed trails running over our neighborhood and by Old Quarry. They later told us they had intended to contact us, and their not having done so was only an oversight. They have yet to make public a dated, comprehensive map specifying the details and scenic consequences of their intended path through Guilford. Those withholding, even secretive tactics are especially alarming, not only to those who live along the way, but also to those who work so hard to give Route 146 historic and scenic designations, to protect the health of its grand estuaries, and to conserve the surrounding land. The SGT program of a continuous trail from Madison to Lighthouse Point confuses issues of necessary public transportation with those of a particular mode of recreation. Continuity is an abstract idea that overlooks the presence of private properties, thoroughly developed existing walking trails dedicated to land conservation, delicate ecosystems and rising high tides. The recent SGT mailing also includes an alarmist reference to roadway bicycle accidents, which further confuses safety issues with its specialized recreational project. Those accidents should be addressed by looking at successful vehicular control techniques used worldwide, not by adding one more environmentally intrusive roadbed, sized to include not only bicycles, but also baby strollers, pedestrians, some presumably bringing along their dogs. The SGT constituency represents the specialized recreational interests of a particular group in which the most notable are the cyclists. Its deceptive tactics, confused program, and lack of disclosure regarding its intended path along Route 146 in Guilford preempt the potential voices of opposition coming from all those concerned with environmental health, land conservation, historic preservation, and scenic vistas. Very sincerely, Nona and Kent Bloomer.
Thank you.
Sorry. I wanted to squeeze in here before I lose his attention span. My name is Kimberly Schmidt. I live at 140 Wild Rose Avenue, and I wanted to come and voice my support and my family's support for the Shoreline Greenway Trail along the Route 1 section. I am a mother with a 1-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a husband. My 4-year-old bikes on the green currently. She's getting a little big for the green, and we actually have not found any other place in Guilford to bike safely, and safety is my utmost concern. I also do a lot of walking and running with the kids in a double stroller, so you might see me along on the sidewalks doing that. But actually, even the stroller is a bit tough on the sidewalks, especially with the double stroller. So getting further out onto the Hammonasset Trail, the Shoreline Greenway Trail in Hammonasset has been glorious, and I really hope that Guilford can add our own section along Route 1. I feel like Route 1 is a perfect section for the trail. I do have friends who bike, and will be using that as a commuter lane, like a biking in for work into Guilford if it's approved, so I hope it is. Also, my husband collided, he was bicycling, he collided with a car. The car had no scratches, no dents, and he was in bed for a month. And because of that, we do not bike on the roads anymore. And I will not let my children bike on the roads, and I will not drag them in a bike trailer along the roads. So having a safe off-road trail for us is incredibly important as a family, and especially as a mother. So thank you very much for considering it.
I think you need to keep speaking. He's sitting.
I know, right?
He likes the limelight.
Hello, my
Good
name
morning,
is
sir.
Good morning. Louis Mako. I'm a resident of Dudleytown, Guilford, an architect, and an owner of 2 businesses on Leeds Island Road. My daily commute takes me past the section of Route 1 in question and a significant portion of Route 146. I present to you here the document that some, but not all, of you have seen. It is the Shoreline Greenway Trail document prepared by Stantec back in 2010. On page 41, we're told there will be a sidewalk beginning at the East River Bridge and continuing down to meet the existing sidewalk on Boston Street. But in the spring press report of the SGT, they make reference to a trail 10 foot wide for bikers and walkers. The funds for this, $269,000, are referred to as a recreational trails grant. In the July report by Zoe Roos, we are told that the final design for this is under review by DOT, and by the way, design services for this work were performed for SGT by our own town engineer. The details section G5 on page 153 of the Greenway plan, this plan, shows neither a sidewalk nor a greenway trail 10 feet wide. To summarize, the public does not know if the plan for Route 1 is a sidewalk, a greenway trail 10 feet wide, or simply bike lanes drawn on the road. Furthermore, we don't know if this is a project of the Shoreline Greenway Trail Organization, the Connecticut Department of Transportation, the town of Guilford, or Jim Portley. We do know it is not a project of the people of Guilford. We polled and have petitions from 6 out of 7 of the people that live on this stretch, 3/4 of a mile on Route 1, and 6 out of the 7 have signed our petition saying, hold it, we need more information. Thank you.
I'm Pam Bisbee Simons, 57 Spencer Avenue, Guilford, and I've been the co-chair of the Guilford team of the Shoreline Greenway Trail for the past 3 years and was a founding member of the trail since 2001. And I'm here today to say to you, Selectmen, that you finally have an opportunity to support our Route 1 trail section.
Ma'am, could you speak up, please?
Yes, that's very familiar to you. We had a public meeting with Jim Portley in 2014, and also the Stantec report that I do need to quickly refer to was provided to SCROG as a criteria of our federal grant that we received, and it was only a preliminary engineering study. It has never been the full plan. No part of it is what we have already approved, and nothing will go forward from the Shoreline Greenway Trail Board unless it has been approved by the landowners over whose properties it will go. And we only work with landowner approval, so I just wanted to get that out there. Today, I think the focus really should be on the Route 1 section. You have an awesome responsibility to accept it because it's a win-win for the town, and it's free. We have provided all the money through a federal grant and through a state grant and through a deep grant, and also from donations from our 970 members, supporters, and we also have 2,500 supporters in Guilford who are on our mailing list. So you know the benefits. It's going to provide a safe, beautiful off-road recreational trail along busy Route 1 for folks to get from the east end of town finally to Boston Street, where they can then proceed to town and be connected to the center of town for business, for shopping, for pleasure. We have here a packet of, because of the sudden appearance of a petition in town, which we were not prepared for, we sent a call of action out to our supporters. So far we have 41 reply letters supporting the trail, which we are providing you here. There are a lot of, I have to say, there have been several mistruths and misunderstandings in some of the comments we've heard, and I can't address them all here, but we certainly, as a group, the Trail Committee would be most happy to address them, and we have, our next goal is to meet with people more on the west end of town and see where can we go to make traveling along 146 safer. We have no final plan for that at all. We would only do it in concert with conversations with landowners. So the other thing to be aware of is we will lose the state funding if this is not approved and forwarded to the Board of Planning and Zoning for their next step. And that would be a real loss. So we feel the petition holds hostage an absolutely wonderful gem that we can provide on the south side of Route 1. And therefore, we ask you to forward this to the Planning and Zoning. And I did also want to say that you can only build a trail section by section when there's no pre-existing trail bed, as there isn't in Guilford, which has absolutely no safe bike trails. So safety and connection to town are primary goals that we have. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Robert Vavasor. My husband, Louis Burgess, and I live at 575 Leeds Island Road. I'd like to respond to one of the things that Ms. Simons just said to the group, which is about a meeting, the first open meeting that I was aware of. I've trying to follow this issue for many years, and I couldn't get information about what is really the plan by SGT for the shoreline, the entire length, from the Madison River crossing over to the edge of Brantford. And I went to the meeting in August 2014, along with some other people from the 146th area and also closer to town along Route 1. And we attempted to ask questions. There were questions that were asked at that meeting that had to do with whether or not there would be resort to eminent domain. There were questions asked, what's the full route? And we were politely told, this meeting is not going to answer any of those questions. It's not for that purpose. It's to talk only about Route 1. So we weren't pleased that we couldn't have answers to our questions in what we thought was a public open forum to discuss these issues, which naturally occurred to many of us. But we were polite and respected the process. And we said, all right, we will wait for the next opportunity to be heard and to speak. This morning is our first opportunity to be heard and to speak. There was no public participation at that meeting from the point of view of people who had concerns that you have not heard addressed before today, perhaps. Ms. Simons talks about a off-road experience that she would like to have, and that is going to, and I think you must realize this, that's going to involve resort to eminent domain. It has to. You can't build a continuous 25-mile off-road route from Hammonasset to Lighthouse Point without crossing hundreds of parcels of privately owned property. And just in Guilford, many of those people who have never been contacted by the Shoreline Greenway Trail about their permission, and many who have said no. Just taking the Guilford section, which is what we're here for, we have at the end of the road where it hits Brantford, the Bloomer properties. They have been approached, they've said no. Yale University's Peabody Museum, which adjoins that, taking the landing into Brantford, was approached in March, or before March. Their board voted no, they will not. It destroys a conservation area and a study area that's extremely valuable for studying environmental change. The Lead family has been repeatedly approached over the years and has repeatedly said no. I met with a group of the Lead family that asked to talk to me earlier last week, and they said, what do they want us to do? We keep saying no, they keep coming back. They're being badgered, and they've said consistently, no, we do not, and we will not let this road go across our properties. Mr. Ifkovic, who's here to our right, owns both properties that flank the West River landing of the West River, the West River Bridge. I'll let him speak for himself, but I'll leave it to you to understand he's not a supporter of it coming across his property. Numerous people who signed the petition have already expressed that they will not let it cross their property, but we've never been contacted by the Greenway Trail. They've had 15 years to do so. They have not done so. Ms. Simon says that, we don't have a plan. That's our problem. They don't. This is a plan which they disavow. However, this plan, which was created at almost $300,000 of federal taxpayer money, which we pay for, they are walking away from and disavow. It's the only plan anyone has ever had a chance to see. We've all studied it in minute detail. And there are trails, very clearly, that will go through private properties all along the length in Guilford. Again, almost none of those people have been approached for their permission. Most of the ones who have that we know have said no. So I don't understand the reality to that, saying we're going to do this, when the owners have said, we don't want you to, unless you're talking about eminent domain. And I totally believe that you members of this board would not invoke eminent domain. I believe that. I don't think you would do that to your neighbors. I don't think in any way, shape, or form that's on your agenda or your radar. I don't. But we aren't worried about you. The money and the funding comes from remote sources, bureaucrats in Washington and in Hartford, at DEEP, and other federal agencies who provided the funding. And they expect what some people want to call a sidewalk, and we know as a Greenway Trail, as they tell the press all the time, it's a Greenway Trail, and this is the first segment. That is going to be built because they've given the money for that purpose, not for a sidewalk. So we know that the plan that we've got here is the only one we can work with, and we do need to have an input process, a fair and open one, where the rest of us can say what our concerns are, and that we do not want these things to go for these reasons, and you should know these things. But when you do have a threat, as we do have, of eminent domain being invoked, it will not be by you, but it will be, and the trigger will be pulled by someone who's not accountable to Guilford residents. They will be talking to no one about this. It'll be something that their job requires them to do because these federal funds were given for this purpose, and it's got to be completed. And that's how it'll happen. It'll be done through a bureaucrat, not in Guilford, not accountable to us, who will never feel any heat for that vote, because there won't be a vote. It'll be a decision. And this is your responsibility, and we look to you as the people we trust and we elected to do the hard things and make the hard decisions, to recognize if we want to build a sidewalk there, and it's that important, let's do it. And let's not do it with all these strings attached. That will come with using the federal funding, which inevitably will require it to be completed. And the Greenway Trail is not in agreement with you about whether this is going to be completed. They're very determined it will be, and they tell the press
Bob, I'm
that.
gonna have to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay.
Way past 3 minutes.
Only one last thing is, the funding is not hostage to this. There's a new cycle that's just opening, as there is every year, to get funding for these types of uses for recreational trails. If they were to lose the existing funding, they can apply again. And they've had support in obtaining it in the past, which I expect they would obtain again. Sorry I went over, but thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Yes.
Take your time. Good.
My name is Gretchen Granberry, and I'm here to speak for Matt McCleary of the Old Quarry Association. He's unable to make it this morning. Dear Guilford Board of Selectmen, the Executive Board of the Old Quarry Association, duly authorized to represent our membership of 24 homeowners and taxpayers of Guilford, strongly oppose the approval or construction of any segment of a greenway or bikeway through Guilford until we and the general public have had the opportunity to review a detailed plan for the construction and maintenance of the entirety of the proposed route. A few years ago, we were very surprised to see a map showing a proposed route traveling across land owned by the Old Quarry Association, despite the fact that we were never even made aware of this plan. It is unreasonable that any portion of a project of this significance can be pursued without providing information to those residents directly affected by it. In the light of the enormous personal, environmental, and economic impact of this project will have on the citizens and town of Guilford, we urge the Selectmen require the applicants to provide a detailed proposal for the entire project and make that plan available to the public before approving any segment of it. Respectfully submitted, Old Quarry Association Executive Board, Matt McCleary.
Thank you. We did receive his email this morning, and it is part of the record.
Wasn't sure that it would be, so he
No,
did
I
ask me to read
received
it.
it about 7:30 this morning. Who's next, please? Chip? I have to remind everybody, please keep to the 3 minutes. We have a long agenda this morning.
My name is Chip Angle. I was founding chair of the Shoreline Greenway Trail and I was chair until last September when I stepped down. I was fortunate that I stepped down because I was hit by a car last October in Los Angeles and realized how important it is to have facilities, safe facilities for bikers and pedestrians throughout, in our own town and throughout the shoreline. We've been working on this for 15 years, as has been mentioned. We have absolutely no intention of ever building a trail without the landowner approval. We are completely open. Our board meetings are open. We have there are no secrets at all. As Pam mentioned, the preliminary engineering study that was commissioned by Scrog years ago was just that, a preliminary indication of where the trail might go. Nothing that we accepted as final and nothing that the town or the state accepted as final. It was a feasibility study to see if it made sense to pursue this project. Early on, we were lucky enough to win a grant from the National Park Service and a consulting grant, and the head of the Connecticut and Rhode Island Rivers and Trails program of the National Park Service consulted with us. At that time, on the board of the Shoreline Greenway Trail, there was a split as to whether we should pursue the trail at all until we had pinned down every section and gotten landowner approval for every section throughout the entire 25 miles, or whether we should build it piece by piece as landowner permission and funding became available. The National Park Service advised us strongly that the only way to get a trail of our sort without a dedicated corridor built was to build it section by section as it became available. We have followed that advice since then. The Route 1 section, as has been mentioned, will be a great asset to the town. We urge that it be built. We urge that we move ahead now and not risk losing the funding that we have taken so long to line up. Our representatives, including Senator Meyer, who is here, have been very helpful in. He was the sponsor of the state funding that we have, where we were very fortunate to get federal funding. That federal funding is not enough to build the entire trail. We've had to focus on one project in each town. The other 3 towns we have projects that have been built, and it's only Guilford where there isn't a built section. The trail has been very popular. Hundreds of people use it. It's been well accepted. The whole trail began in Guilford. It was the Guilford Preservation Alliance that came up with the idea in the beginning, set up a working group, and out of that working group sprung the Shoreline Greenway Trail. GPA realized it wasn't exactly on their mission and spun us off into a separate group. We became quickly a 501c3 tax deductible organization and have proceeded since then. There has never been a thought of using eminent domain, whereas not that we would have the right to use it, but we certainly have worked with the landowners in every case throughout the trail. We realize that as much as we'd love to have the entire trail off-road for 25 miles, that's not a reality, that it will be on-road or beside the road like the Route 1 section that's now under consideration. And we certainly have no intention, as I said, of going against landowner wishes. We don't feel like we've badgered the Leets. We worked with the Leets closely. We thought we had an agreement with the Leets, and that didn't work out, so it's a closed book as far as we're concerned.
Excuse me, Chip, I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, fine. So anyway, we ask that the Board of Selectmen act favorably on the proposition that's in front of them. We'd be glad to work with any neighbors on future sections that we have not planned, and we're surprised by this opposition. All we're trying to do is build a fabulous asset for the town of Guilford and all the towns along the shoreline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My name is Don Ifkovic Jr. I'm a small business owner in town. I own a few properties. I live on the west side of Jones Bridge. I own on the south and north side of the bridge. I've worked very hard with the Historical Society to try to do what's right for the town of Guilford. I own multiple homes that are right close to the road. This will really, really affect my way of life and the way of life for my tenants, which is just totally wrong. It's going to be a big taxpayer burden. We all pay enough in taxes. We work very hard to live in this town. And It's gonna be expense after expense. We're gonna wind up needing more policemen, fire department. Who's gonna maintain it? Who's gonna clean up the mess? I'm picking up garbage from the people going by constantly. We have a lady that's nice enough to do it every day. It's where the people crab, it's garbage, garbage, garbage. We really should consider a great plan. And I don't know of anyone that I've talked to that lives anywhere in that area that would be for any part of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
My name is Brad Kronstadt. I live at 42 Cornwall Lane. We've been Guilford residents for over 40 years. Among my hobbies are biking. I like to bike a lot. In Guilford, I usually bike from the Guilford Green out towards Westbrook along US 1, which is very dangerous in some spots, very narrow. The best part of it is in Hammonasset, the Shoreline Greenway Trail there. And by the way, I'm treasurer of the Shoreline Greenway Trail, I should mention. It's a beautiful section. It's always well populated, whether you go during the week or on the weekend. There are bikers, hikers, people with strollers. Everyone there is friendly. You pass somebody, they generally wave or say hello to you as you go by. Coming back on US 1 from Madison, when you go up towards the diner, it's very narrow. The bike lane's about 3 inches wide. It's going uphill, which is dangerous. Cars whiz by you around curves there. It's really not safe. I do biking on other trails in Connecticut and Massachusetts. You go by one of the trails in Cheshire, it goes through a lot of backyards of homes, and you'll see people have fences there, and they actually have cutouts or doorways from their backyard to the trail because they use it. Most people along trails love the trails because they participate in the trail and enjoy it. And most people on the trails are considerate and don't litter. There always are some that do, but that happens now even without a trail. The other thing I want to mention is that on this first section of trail that we're proposing to be built at this time, there was only one homeowner who needed to give approval for a right-of-way across their yard, and they were very, very enthusiastic about it. They think the trail's going to be great. It's actually an older couple who I'm sure won't bike on it, but hopefully they'll be able to get out there and walk on the trail. And we do try to work with everybody. And on this section, we did have a hearing open to the public and to all the landowners there about a year or two ago. So I would urge you to vote in favor of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Yeah, this will be very quick.
Watch your step, sir.
I just wanted to,
Name and address, please.
my name is Kent Bloomer, 988 Leeds Island Road. And I just wanted to sort of reiterate or reinforce the notion that we are just as concerned by I mean the so-called opposition, with safety and all of the things we've heard about. And we think that these things can be addressed in conventional ways, that we don't need a new roadbed, 11 feet wide, which is in fact a road, not just a solution to a problem, to address virtually everything we've just heard about safety. I think the safety issue is a straw man. These things can be handled in proper, internationally functional ways without the construction of this beam. So there has to be a clear distinction between whether we want to solve with sidewalks and other devices the safety issue, or we want to permit this sort of what we perceive as a slight monstrosity to come through our town. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Is it possible to add one thing?
No, ma'am, I want to get everybody in here. We have some,
Carlton Granberry, 982 Leeds Island Road, for submission to the record, Board of Selection meeting Monday, September 19th, 2016. I will read a quote by Joe Mazza from the Guilford Courier on September 15th, 2016. And I quote, "I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I can't see any problem with the board approving this project. If, as Mr. Mazza says, he can't speak for the rest of the board, I would like to hear directly from Mr. Mazza what compelled him to announce this publicly. as well as what has been going on behind closed doors during this past week. Also, I would like to know, on what date did the town assume the role of applicant for this shoreline asphalt trail, and what was the cost to the taxpayers for designing this private initiative prior to that date? Thank you.
You'll hear it during deliberation, sir.
Frank Farrow, 159 Granite Road. Probably reiterating a number of things already said, but to the Board of Selectmen regarding the Greenway Trails request, it seems to me there's two issues. There's the first, the link from Madison to the Guilford line, and then a lot of us are talking about from Guilford to Branford, which is what I'm talking about. I object to the Greenway Trail's current attempt to link their Madison Trail and their Branford Trail through Guilford without a clear and specific trail route proposed and made available for public review. I'm opposed for the following reasons. I do not like the strategy employed by Greenway Trails to pressure Guilford into agreeing to something it may or may not want by establishing trails on either end of Guilford and then making Guilford look uncooperative, even though Greenway Trails has no thoroughly mapped and reviewed trail route through Guilford. I do not like their attempt to skirt their second public hearing at Planning and Zoning, having not received a welcoming reception from the public at the first public hearing, by claiming they are unprepared for that hearing, yet going to the Board of Selectmen for this very hearing. I do not like their lack of transparency by not revealing to the public possible routes or discussion with town officials as to what those routes might be until practically forced to reveal these matters by members of the public and P&Z board members at the first P&Z public hearing. I do not like the fact that they can claim they would never take property by eminent domain, yet the state, which will fund at least part of the Guilford Trail link, can and will take property that way if they need to. I request the Board of Selectmen require Greenway Trails to establish, with town officials and affected property owners, a proposed route that will not cause environmental or ecological harm, will not cause property to be taken from owners, and then to reveal this plan to the public for discussion before going to public hearings for approval.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay.
Is it possible for one of our members who is the chairman of the whole Greenway Trail to speak, who lives in Branford, but she's the chairman of the whole Greenway Trail? Is it allowed for a non-resident to speak?
No, not at this time. Okay. One more, okay? You're it.
Not me, I already got anyone else who wants to.
You're the one more, okay?
David Grigsby, 37 Union Street in Guilford. I heard Mr. Engel refer to, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes.
Thank you. That the SCG group works with the neighbors. When I was at the CAM hearing at Planning and Zoning, and I inquired about just the section that we're talking about right now along Route 1, did in fact the neighbors agree? And when I inquired that, it kind of changed into there's general agreement. And then when I asked, what exactly did the neighbors agree to, could I see the writing, it turned out that they had verbal agreement. When I then went looking into the file after the fact, it turns out what they did was they wrote a letter in 2012 to the neighbors saying, we're thinking about a bike trail. Sure you're interested in hearing about it? Call us if you're interested. And the reality is, if they didn't hear from the neighbors, they assumed that must mean they were in favor of it. That's the representation that was made of, they worked with the neighbors. They wrote a letter 4 years ago, August 2012. I am a cyclist, incidentally. I've gone on the trail in Madison a couple of times now just to see what it's like. My experience, it's actually kind of dangerous in the sense that it's gravel. As a cyclist, what I'm really looking for is a widened shoulder on the road. I like that along 146. I like it along Route 1 in Madison. That's what I think a cyclist needs. I don't think that this narrow trail or gravel trail is the solution here. I'm also concerned as a taxpayer of Guilford. I think I was represented that this is free. I mean, I was way in the back, so I don't know for sure what was heard. I heard free, and I think by free they mean other people's tax dollars. And what I'm concerned about, and we don't know the answer to, is the ongoing maintenance, the ongoing repair work that is required here. At the CAM hearing at Planning and Zoning, I pointed out that there was a tree over the trail. Whenever I call somebody to take down a tree, it costs me $600, $800, $1,000. That apparently is going to be Town of Guilford maintenance. That's my biggest concern going forward. I'm also concerned because eminent domain has been used in other towns in Connecticut to promote a trail, and obviously there are plenty of concerned citizens here who are worried about, is their trail or is their property going to be taken? Since we don't know where this trail is going to go, if we sign up for this section of a trail, we're signed up for the entire length of Guilford. We just don't know where it's going to go, and I think that's why most people are here. That's why most people are upset. They want to know where the trail is going to go. They want to make sure that they're in agreement with it, and if it's not feasible, if it's not practical, we shouldn't build it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else? Okay, we'll move on. Item 3, approval of the minutes for September 6, 2016, regular meeting. Do I have a motion? So moved.
Second.
Any additions or corrections? Okay, seeing none, motion is approved.
Joe,
Yep.
would it be possible to move up?
No, we're not.
Not now?
No. I have board members that have to go on, and I want to get the finance director. Finance Department, Linda Savitsky, she back there? Making her way through the crowd, so wait a second. By the way, everyone who sent in a email regarding the issue of the trail, we have received all your emails, and they will become part of the public record, so. Even if you send them at 11:30 last night, I was up printing them out, so all the members of the board have them right now, so.
Do we need to call up to her office?
Jim just went to get her.
Oh, okay. All right.
Come on, Linda, we're waiting for you.
Excuse me, excuse me. Good morning.
Good morning. Item 4.1, receive the monthly report from the finance director. How do you want to start? You want to talk about June or July and August? Let's talk about June. Okay?
You want to do it in conjunction with the transfers?
Yes, let's do it that way.
Okay. You have in front of you a document that looks this way. It's
Yep.
the transfers. What we are recommending is that we have shortages. We actually have shortages in,
Well, why don't we start off with the results of fiscal year?
I can't believe this. I don't have the right document with me. I apologize. I don't have the right document in front of me. I gotta go back. The bottom line is, you have it, right?
Right.
Thanks, Jim. Sorry about that. Is that supposed to be in here?
Yeah. I put mine in there, so maybe.
Oh, okay, so then you may not. Currently, right now, where we are, and we're pretty close to closing at this point, is that revenues have come in, and I'm gonna round, $745,000 in excess of what was identified as the budget, which is really very good. And expenditures are coming in, again, where we are now is $895,000 under. So that brings us to an operating, results of operations positive $1,640,000. I'm not sure historically how that compares to what's going on in previous years, but this was, you clearly had a great year for revenues, with the numbers to come in. And then again, on the expenditure side, I'm sure that the winter, or the lack of a significant winter, really played a part in this. Does anybody have any questions on either of those two numbers? Okay. As is often the case, we have to make some year-end transfers because departments have either gone over, or it was planned, or there were unexpected things that might have occurred. Based on my knowledge of what goes on in other communities, I would say this is pretty remarkable that you have very few departments that have actually gone over. There are do you want me to go through each one individually, or?
You can go through each one individually.
You want me to? Okay. The first one is the finance department, which I am obviously involved with. We were priced for the audit based on the finance director preparing the financial statements. Because the finance director effectively retired 2 weeks ago and really was out for the majority of the summer, we are bracing ourselves for the possibility that we will not be able to pull the full statements together the way that she normally did. And so we haven't gotten an estimate yet from the auditors, but they have alerted us as well that if in fact it turns out that there's too many of these that they have to do, then there's going to be a cost. So this $7,000 may or may not get spent, but we felt that it was wise to set the money aside to make sure, because it really is attributable to the period. The second is registrar of voters. You had multiple budget referendum, and that's really what cost. It was predominantly in the poll workers at the polls. The third is natural resources, tree maintenance and removal expenses, $9,500, and I've rounded all of these. These numbers are a little lower than that. I'm not quite sure exactly what that's all about, but it's not atypical either, where you would have maintenance that has to be done during the course of the year. The fourth is the replacement salaries, and I went back because I wanted to make sure this wasn't an aberration, and it appears that this is an ongoing, or an issue that occurs on a fairly regular basis. My understanding is that every time a member of the fire department is unable to perform his or her shift duties, that someone else has to be brought in to cover the shift because there's manning requirements, and because of that, there's usually an incremental increase because you're talking about an overtime situation, and the fire department and finance track that information separately. The other issue was we had several people out on workers' comp, and when someone goes out on workers' comp, it's really the same thing. Somebody else has to fill in, leads to the potential of more overtime. So that's effectively what the $160,000 is. The debt retirement and the interest, $185,000. I'm not sure what happened, but my understanding is this is something that Sheila had been advising you of on a regular basis. As you know, when we get a premium, when you sell bonds or notes, those monies are kept separate, and we're recommending that the $185,000, which I think was her plan all along, or at least
put in reserve.
It's a reserve, and I think that's what she had been advising you all. And maybe we should separate those from the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any questions on any of the ones I've just talked about? Before and what we tried to do, with the exception of the bond, is we first went to the contingency account, and you didn't use it at all last year, and that's basically what a contingency account there is there for. So we really worked with the contingency account, and then had to take extra money for the fire department out of the communications department where there was money available. Do you want to talk about the
So do you want to
golf
make a
course?
motion for those, or do them all together, John?
No, we'll do them all together. Okay.
Do you want to talk about the golf, or you want me to talk about the golf?
You can talk and I'll
Okay.
fill it.
You run the Guilford Lakes Golf Course as an enterprise fund, and when you set something up as an enterprise fund, the ultimate goal is that this will be totally and completely self-supporting. Unfortunately, that really hasn't been the history, and there's a lot of reasons for that, which we're not going to go into, but the bottom line is you had such a strong results of operations that it was determined that it probably made sense to try to clean this deficit up because every year they run a negative results of operations and then it just keeps on accumulating. So we're recommending that we transfer $475,000, and you can see the four departments. Again, it's all coming out of available funds that were in the fiscal 16 operating budget, the results. To the Lakes Golf Course, this will cover the cumulative deficit that's audited through 6/30/15, what the estimate is at 6/30/16, and where we are projecting it to be at 6/30/17.
Now, this has been ongoing discussion with myself and the chairman of the Board of Finance for probably the last year. And that we're going to eliminate it as a enterprising fund only, not the golf course, but as an enterprising fund, and put it in the 2018 budget, recognize it as an operating department and be part of the operating budget, something that I think we have discussed and the Board of Finance has discussed. Now, to do that, we would have to wipe out the deficit, and this was a good opportunity to wipe it out when we had such a good result in our operations of 2016.
Yes.
So Matt Hoy and I both agree, and well, of course, we have to present this to the Board of Finance tonight anyway, I have to. And he's on board with this.
Yes.
And then the golf course is going to have to present a regular operating budget to this board and to the Board of Finance when we prepare our 2018 budgets. This does not mean that they have carte blanche to do what they've been doing, and they will understand this when I meet with them tomorrow at their commission meeting. Okay, so this just wipes out the ills of the past.
Yes.
And we have to do this according to our auditors.
You don't want to start moving them over to the general fund and not having eliminated the deficit. It is possible that when the 16 audit results are received, and as we move further along into the fiscal 17 budget, there may need to be a small, possibly a smaller increase in another transfer that might have to be made, depending upon how the weather goes and depending upon, the usage of the course.
So that's the reasoning for that.
So what the bottom line is that if you take the $1.6 million of the operating surplus and the transfer, and deal with the transfer in from the debt service reserve and the transfer out to the golf course, you come up with a net results of operations, which is $1,350,000, which is, again, is pretty significant, and also ties pretty closely to what the town represented when they were selling the bonds at the beginning of August. And that's critical, because what we share with the rating agencies, particularly when it's preliminary numbers, you want to stay as close to or hopefully get to those numbers as possible. Does anybody, what you have in the little box, I hope you can read all this, is the summary of where the monies have come from, basically. And I just noticed something, we're off by $1,000, that the contingency transfer is actually 175, not 174. So what you're talking about is this series of transfers. No, theirs is right, okay. The one I'm looking at, we were off by 1,000. So what we're asking for is a series of transfers that will basically deal with $854,000 worth of issues. And I'm happy to answer any other questions if you have any.
I'll move the transfers.
Second. Any discussion on the motion?
Just for clarification, so the implication of the golf course transfer is that in addition to the 30,000 that we've been transferring for the last few years,
That's correct.
that there's an accumulated deficit of approximately 400, subject to final audit, but approximately $475,000, which needs to be cleaned up in order to move its account. But the reality is, we're clearing up a $475,000 accumulated deficit, which
Accumulated plus estimated deficit.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, as I said, subject to audit. In addition to the
Well,
annual
estimated
one.
for the current year.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that's
In
correct.
addition to the annuals.
Yeah, okay. Any further discussion? Call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous, okay. Okay. You want to move on to July and August?
Again, I didn't bring the right papers with me. Did I have it in here?
Should be.
Oh, you know where, it's in, I know it's, oh. It's in my Board of Finance packet, that's what it is, okay. I think it's fair to say that we're finally, 2 weeks ago, we were finally able to do the preliminary close on June 30, 16, which now means we can really start devoting our energies to making sure that, one, we're ready for the audit, but two, that everything has to be paid out of July and August, which is for the current year.
Pretty much on track.
Yeah, we're on track. Tax collections look healthy. Roughly 50% of them come in at the beginning of the year, and I believe we're a little over the 50% mark. Right now, who knows what's going on in Hartford, but the impact on the budget should not be significant unless the education revenues take a hit. And does anybody have, and from what I can see, the expenditures appear to be coming through on target.
Any questions?
Anybody have any
The
questions?
question I have, and I don't know, maybe you can get to me during the week, but I saw a payment to the architects for the high school. Is that wrapping, it was a $2 million payment to the high school. Is that the end of the architects? Of
No, no, there's still some,
in the planning stages?
there's still some holdbacks until the building committee has signed off on it. Now, obviously, they did get their final CO,
Okay.
okay, but there's still some change orders.
Well, I know about the change orders, but this was part of the, it was the $2 million for the, the planning stage.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay.
When the final numbers for June are in, are we gonna be able to have some discussion about the allocation of the surplus and whether or not we're just gonna leave it in surplus or move into some other alternate?
Yeah, we have to wait for the year.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but I just wanna sort of go on record that we will have that discussion in some format, either at a meeting or at a workshop or something.
Probably December or January at some point when we get the audit. Okay. Anything further for Lyndon?
Thank you very
Lyndon.
much. Can you hand that back to Joe, please?
Need it for tonight.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry we delayed you there, but. Okay, item 5, Town Engineer Jim Portland.
Could we move up 5-4?
All right, I have a request to move 5.4 up. Any objection to that?
No.
Okay, Jim, we're gonna move you to 5.4.
Okay.
You wanna,
Start at the bottom and work up.
Yeah.
Almost the bottom.
Almost.
Okay, so, you wanna start with your presentation or whatever you got for us?
Well, I'm not sure what these numbers quite reconcile.
Okay, yeah,
Where you going to finance tonight?
yeah,
I sent you a memo basically that says that
we're right, yeah. Oh, Jesus.
the engineering department has been working on the first section of the trail identified as section G2 and the 2010 Shoreline Greenway study.
Do you have a copy for all the selectmen here?
Of the study?
Yeah, no, this. Remember that Mark said.
I have a couple of copies. I have one for myself.
I'll pass this around, they could look at it. I already read it.
All right.
Why don't you continue?
Okay. The project has been authorized by the Department of Transportation, which is responsible for the oversight of the federal funds, which are the primary source of the project funding. In addition to the federal funds, the Shoreline Greenway Trail has received state bond money through the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection to assume full funding of this first phase. So the first phase of the project from the East River to Route 146 is fully funded through the federal money and through the state money. There is no town money involved in this project. Public information meeting was held on August 13th, 2014, to present the preliminary design of Phase 1 to the public. It was well attended. Prior to that meeting, all property owners along Route 1, which is, it's all on Route 1 in that first section, were contacted directly to gather comments and input. There were questions seeking clarifications of the design, but no opposition was expressed to the project. So it is recommended that the Board of Selectmen consider and approve, one, construction of the Shoreline Greenway Trail Phase 1 from Madison Town Line to the Route 1 intersection with Route 146, as shown on the plans entitled Shoreline Greenway Trail Proposed Multi-Use Path, Boston Post Road, Final Design Project number 059-162, and it's a voluminous set of drawings that show that design. And number two, that the Board of Selectmen give authorization to the town engineer to make the coastal area management application and send the project to the Planning and Zoning Commission for mandatory referral under CGS 8-24. So this is kind of the culmination of a long process that has first started back before 2010, but 2010, the study was done by Stantec under funding through COG, Council of Governments. They showed a concept. They looked at alternates that were available. It was never intended to be the final design drawing or concept. It was understood to be a snapshot in time where this Greenway Trail could be. Obviously, as you go further to the west from the center, it took on more issues. They looked at more options. But the section from Madison, since it was going to be a continuous trail from, theoretically, from East or New Haven to Madison, there was really only one option on the east side of town, and that was along Route 1. So that was thought to be the least controversial of all the sections. There was plenty of right-of-way within the state Route 1 control that would allow construction of this first phase. That being said, we proceeded with design. We did have the meeting in 2014 that presented that design to the residents. Letters were sent out, and I have copies of all the people who abutted the trail, including people across the street, that this information meeting was going to be held. It was all sent to our congressmen and all the other people that we had to advise of the progress of the project. And once that public information meeting was held, we then proceeded with final design. And we have achieved that now. The money's in place. There is no Guilford money being spent on this project. At this point, the only contribution we've made to date has been the design time of the engineering department. Some people think that's not worth anything. Some people think it's worth a lot of money. But it is at that point. We have gone through the DOT review. We feel it's certainly a section of the trail that is indisputable. And it's the only place it can be. If we're going to have a trail, that's where it should be. As I said, it's a section we all know that there are people riding on our roads on bicycles or walking. And there's a section of road from Madison Town Line to 146. There's no sidewalk. It's got to make it safer. It's intended to be safer. And so there's no downside to the construction of this first phase. So that being said, I would reiterate my recommendation that the Board of Selectmen approve the construction of the Greenway Trail Phase 1 as defined, and that you authorize the engineering department to make the CAM application and send the project to the Planning and Zoning Commission for mandatory referral. The CAM application and the mandatory referral are necessary for the completion of all the documentation that's needed to be given to the DOT before they will authorize construction of the project.
Motion for discussion.
Is there a second? Second, okay.
Jim, I have a question. So just, because we obviously received a lot of correspondence
Yes.
and communication in the last 72 hours, so, a couple questions. With regard, that was brought up, what happens if there's no further approval? I mean, like, they can't get the trail, I mean, what, the trails, that's it for the trail? I mean, what's the process for phase 2 or phase 3, or I don't know how many phases they're planning.
Well, it's a long trail through from Guilford.
Yeah.
If we don't get approval on this first phase, the money probably will be allocated to some other part.
No, but I mean, let's assume phase 1, but what's the process for the further, I mean, what if they don't get buy-in from, I mean, because it sounds like they don't have a plan for the next stages at this point.
No, all
because
they
don't-
have is this conceptual plan.
Right.
As I said, I think there would be revisiting if there's, the opposition is there for any, the idea was to keep looking at options. Madison's run into this in their plans. That's why they switched to the west end of their town, because it's right away. That has to be a discussion. I don't think there can be an answer here. It may be that there has to be different routing chosen. What has been looked at in the past was go along the railroad right of way. There was a lot of opposition for, obviously, Amtrak to putting it along there. That would have been a section that would have had very little or no opposition if you put it there. Maybe there'll be a change in attitude. You never can tell what happens. It's going to happen. I think you've heard all the opposition to the people along 146. I would guess there'd have to be a look at some other option of going along 146.
Has there been discussion about staying along Route 1 from one end to the other?
That was not part of the report that was done by Stantec. I would guess if that was, and that would really take the discussions with the Shoreline Greenway Trail Committee. They're the motivators. We've been trying to work with them to see that their vision achieved. The idea was to have something along the shoreline, so that I think take advantage of the beauty of Guilford and of the other towns too. It wasn't to be a Route 1 sidewalk. It was to be something better than that. And I think that would have to be looked into in future endeavors. I couldn't give you an answer now. But I think there'll be a lot of discussions as a result of this morning and going forward. But there's no real answer to that, so you go through it.
I think, given what's taken place in the last few days, and what has happened since the Greenway Trails first started this project, that we need to kind of stand back, take a deep breath, and maybe even start again, because I think we really got off on the wrong foot. A lot of people are upset with the methodology that the Greenway Trail used in certain circumstances. A lot of people are upset because there's questions about eminent domain, and as we all know on this board, eminent domain, we had a situation in town this year where one group of citizens wanted us to institute eminent domain for a water main. You can't just consider eminent domain even for the Board of Selectmen, unless you go through a lot of legal procedure. And you have to be very, very careful that you're doing this for the public safety or for the public benefit or the public good. And even then, there's a lot of legal protection for people. But certainly, all of these questions aren't going to be answered here this morning. I think what we need is, as I said, to step back and have more discussion. This meeting this morning, I think, has been productive. Everybody's been respectful, but they've got their opinions, and they've got their questions, and I think the questions need to be answered in open forum. We know that 146 is a problem today. I mean, the bike lane in some areas, I don't think is 6 inches wide. And I use that road 5 or 6 times a week. It's one of the most dangerous bike areas in the world. Not to mention that it's, with the rising waters, there's 2 sections that are underwater almost once a month. And we've got a mitigation plan for that, but as we did with Old Quarry Road and Chaffinch Island Road. But the state is going to have to step in and do something with 146
at some point, whether they like it or not. And we've talked to them about that. I have, Joe has, the full, I don't know, members of the Board of Selectmen, and they, at the present time, did not want to face the issue. Can't, too expensive, whatever. But I really think it's time to take a deep breath, take a step back, and have more discussion before we go forward. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to give up the funding totally. I mean, you've done a lot of work. I would be in favor of a sidewalk from the top of Cleveland Hill to the Madison line. That would go along with our policy with new construction or.
I think you mean the top of Boston Street. You
The
don't
what?
mean- you
The
don't
top-
mean- you don't mean
yeah,
Cleveland
yeah,
Hill.
yeah, okay. I'm sorry, but that's another issue that isn't going to be answered here this morning, but that maybe we need to discuss, because if we can use the funds for a sidewalk, that would go along with what we have already as an existing policy in the town. I'm sorry to take so long.
So you make your motion to table, Carl?
No, there's a motion on the table.
Jim,
Yeah, but
are you
to
done,
table.
Carl?
Yeah.
Jim, is all of the property on state property?
Yes, all the construction we use.
Has every neighbor been contacted?
Yes, they have.
The reason I'm supporting this piece, and I understand the property owners on the other side, and that's an ongoing struggle, a trail committee, this board, and everybody understands. The property owners over there have a different point of view, and that's fine. But this piece gets us from the Madison border, my perspective, it gets people to the green fairly safely. Okay, it gives them a path for biking, for walking, whatever it is. It connects the Madison border, and whatever Madison does, my understanding, they were trying to do something on their side, to the green, okay? At that point in time, people, or the trail can be looked at, reviewed, discussed, whatever the struggles with the other property owners, that's an evolution. But this little piece, you know, we've done a lot of work, we've gotten to this point, it gets us from the Madison border. In my perspective, it really gets us to the green. Okay, whether or not the trail ends up going down Route 1, or they find some way to make it work through the more scenic parts of town, that's a discussion for another day, in my perspective, okay? The green is a very populous part of our community, and a lot of people congregate there, walk down to the docks, walk around the green, now that we have the sidewalks circling the green. This gives them another outlet over to Sunrise, and that group of people gives them an outlet to the Madison section if that evolves. It just makes a lot of sense for this section. I can appreciate the property owners on the other side have a different perspective and point of view, and that's gonna be a long struggle and get it figured out. And I don't have any answers, because I live off of 146 down on that end. And, but I really do support, and I think we should move forward with this section because of the work that's done. And I just think it's a logical thing to do. I mean, it's just logical in my mind.
Gary?
Charles, I think you stopped short of one question, which is, are all permits or easements required available in writing from all neighboring property owners?
Easements, yes.
I don't think that's the case, according to a conversation I had with one of the property owners, who said he would not grant his easement until he's seen the final plan, and my understanding is that he hasn't seen the final plan.
I don't know who that property owner would be. We've only.
You have a grading easement required, correct?
We've revised the plans, we don't need the grading easement.
Isn't it state right away?
State right away.
That's
There
it.
was only
We're
one
not
place
using
where
anybody's
there was
property.
only one place that we needed an easement, and that was secured from the Rogers, as I recall. The other easements that were needed initially with our initial design, rather than go through that whole process, we just revised the design to make it fit within the state right away.
Okay, is that,
I mean, that's, and we had to answer that to the state.
okay,
That's why I asked the question.
I understand from a property owner that's somewhat different, but anyway,
Well,
I'm
there's
not
a lot
gonna
of
argue that.
misinformation out there.
What?
I mean, there's a lot of
I understand.
misinformation. That's why we want to have
I
the.
understand. My second question is, this is the town's responsibility to maintain
Yes.
legally.
Once
Do we
the,
have any estimate of what the cost of maintenance is?
no, we've had the discussions on, like anything else, who would maintain it with the Shoreline Greenway Trail. They have said that they would be responsible for any physical improvements that were needed to maintain it. The town, and we've been very clear that we have our budget stretched to the limits to maintain our road system. This is not something we need to take on more responsibilities. It's a great endeavor for the people that want to use it. They have said, we will take that responsibility as far as maintenance is concerned. And that's been discussions from the very beginning. Through a series of first selectmen.
But do we have that in writing? I mean, do we have
No,
that
or
do we have a
confirmed?
bond
Because-
Well, I think, it's reasonable if that's a concern now, that we get them, we get that from them now.
In
If
light
that's what
of-
the Board of Selectmen want to have in their file for the future, I think it's reasonable to say if you're in a position where you would approve this, that it would only be approved subject to that condition of approval. We could get that, and if, I think they're people, their word, they said that they would do it.
Enforceable. Which may not be enforceable without a bond or something like that
Right.
behind it.
Well, we could ask town council about that.
I'm gonna go ahead, Garrett, 'cause I think I'm gonna go off of what you said.
Insurance or responsibility, as somebody mentions, for instance, trees, and when there's construction, you can just, stuff happens, either over time or construction destroys roots or whatever. Does that become the town's responsibility to deal with?
During construction, we would have the insurance of the contractors who are working on the job. If in the future, because tree roots are damaged or whatever, and those trees were somehow impaired, I think the town would have responsibility there, yes.
And liability for injuries or any accidents that happen on that property would be the town's?
It would be in the state right away. State being who they are, they say they're only responsible from curb to curb, so it would be like any other sidewalk in town. People will come after the town. It's a fact, we have a lot of miles of sidewalk. It'll be just more like, or any other recreational facility. We have to have insurance. You're more versed on all that than I am,
My last question, we got a budget that was, unfortunately, we just got it now. Are all those funds committed in writing?
The funds, all the funding sources are committed in writing. What you have that we prepared on Friday was our construction cost estimate. There's contingencies, there's a whole cost of the project, which came up to $790,000. And the summary of the funding is $484,000 from the federal government. State bonding initially was $121,000, and then there was a Connecticut DEP grant of $270,000. Total funding of $875,000, so it exceeded the amount of money that was needed for construction. Yes, and they are in writing.
Okay, you got one more thing to say?
Well, just, I guess for me, when we talked about SIM 14, I think, I still like the concept of a greenway trail, I will say that. I've been on record saying that. My concern is that with all the people in this room and all the emails that I've received, which I know my brethren have received as well, that I'm asking that we have at least a couple weeks to table so we can answer some more questions so that there is complete transparency with the folks, that people understand. I understand that they had meetings and people may not have come to the meetings, but let's face it, I mean, one thing in Guilford, we don't like to, at least since the boards that I've served on, to just jam and rush things through. I mean, at the end of the day, you may not agree with our decisions or we may have differences of opinion, but at least I think the understanding has to be there, and there just seems to be a lot of miscommunication. And I'm not saying it's anybody's fault, but I don't see that a couple weeks would be, would disadvantage the process, because I do, my son is 14 years old and he's constantly biking all over the town of Guilford, so believe me, I have concerns about him biking and his friends, but at the same time, I wanna make sure that everybody understands what's going on. So I'm just asking for motion to table for a couple weeks, and maybe during that time, we can get some more information as a board, we can have a little bit more conversations about costs in terms of ongoing maintenance, with the Greenway Trail, just to maybe further understand if there's anything we need, we can bring it back to the next meeting, so that people at least understand, so there's not this feeling that this was, even though I know it's not rushed through, we've been talking about this for years, but there's not this feeling that it's been rushed through. I mean, and I don't see that 2 weeks would jeopardize the funding. I could be wrong, but.
Well, this is going to P and Z. I mean, this doesn't end here, too.
Right.
Okay. Before you make that motion, I have a couple.
Well, we have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, we do have a
Which would
motion on the
have to be
floor.
withdrawn
Yeah.
or
But a couple of questions, Jim, so I understand this correctly, and then I got a couple of comments. You do have written approval or an easement from the one property owner that this sidewalk, trail, whatever you want to call it, has to traverse through.
Right, Mr. Rogers,
Okay, you do have that.
yes.
You do have DOT approval.
They will not give DOT, they will not give approval until we have our CAM application. and
But
our- and- yes, but-
pending CAM application.
Yeah, virtually, they'll have a few comments.
Pending P and Z approval.
Right,
Okay. You do have deep approval,
yes.
and I believe we did a archaeological, I'm pronouncing it wrong, I know, study to make sure there are no Indian
Right.
burial grounds there.
Right.
And that was done.
That was done very early in the
Right, Carl?
process.
Carl is happy about that. Okay, so all you need now for approvals is for this board to send it to planning and zoning on what's called, so everybody understands what I'm saying, an 824 approval, sir.
Right.
Okay, which is statutory. And that means that we have to do our jobs, okay?
Right.
Okay. The numbers you've given us here is construction costs of $590,000, I'm gonna round them off. Contingency for extra work of $13,000. Full-time construction inspector, it's a nice job, $130,000. And Connecticut Department of Transportation Administrator, $56,700. See, they give us the money and then they take it back in another form. That totals $790,000.
Right.
And then the money we receive from the federal government is $484,000, state bonding $121,000, and the Connecticut Deep grant of $270,000. That totals $875,000. So the funds received for this project are more than the cost of the project, by almost $100,000. But there's a caveat here. It says that any portion of the grant not spent gets returned to DEEP.
Right.
So it can't be spent on any other project of the Greenway Trails.
That's correct. It has to be spent within the limits of, as defined by this project.
And that would be, as defined by the project, is from the East River Bridge
Right.
to, let's call it the water tank. Everybody knows where the water
The water
tank
tower,
is.
yeah.
Okay, all right. When my colleague here, sitting to my left, was first selectman, he refused to commit the town to $20,000 for funding the Greenway Trails. Is that right, Carl?
I think so.
Yeah, I know you did. I know you did. When I took office, I refused to commit $20,000 of town money to the Greenway Trails. Taking a lot of heat from my colleagues to the west of us, from Branford and East Haven, and particularly April Capone, who was mayor at the time in East Haven, called me cheap. Well, so be it. But I didn't commit any town funds. And still haven't. And will not. And so I held out. And now the state and the federal government are still going to give us the money to do a portion of that project. When the Greenway Trails people came to me and presented their Santex project, which is sitting over there in the corner, it was quite an ambitious project, and I said, you will never get that entire project built in Guilford all at once. I said, the people of Guilford will not accept it. You can't expect landowners to just give easements for their piece of the property. I said, there has to be another way. And they've worked with the town. It wasn't clandestinely, by the way. It was wide open. We've had meetings. I can remember several meetings in the community center, some at the firehouse. I don't know where people are coming up that we met secretly. We had a public informational meeting which was chaired by Selectman Havita and Selectman McKelney in 2014. I was not present. Where there's a lot of questions and answers. As a matter of fact, the minutes are right here if anybody wants copies of them. I'll be glad to have our staff give copies. There was a lot of give and take. We're pretty transparent. When we realized that we had an opportunity to build a section of a trail, sidewalk, bike path, whatever you want to call it, that we can connect with our neighbors to the east, Madison, that would go from the water tower, not 146, the water tower, that would be on US 1 to the East River and into Madison on all state right-of-way, not touching any citizen of Guilford's property. Yes, I signed on to that, and I still do. It's for bike safety, and it would fulfill part of our obligation if we had one. I feel we have one. And it's all done with federal and state money. Senator Kennedy, who was a very popular senator, proposed an appropriation bill for the Greenway Trails. I have a letter who supported that appropriation. So did First Selectman Cosgrove from Branford and Mayor Maturo in East Haven. Matter of fact, I have a newsletter here that has Senator Kennedy's picture right here, who is an environmentalist who supports the trail. So I feel I'm in pretty good company there. So I'm going to vote for this, unless we table it now, and I have no problem if Selectman Cartier wants to have further discussion, that's fine, but we can't wait too long. In discussions with the consultant that's running the project for the state, he said we either move on this quickly or the monies will be withdrawn and dispersed to Branford and East Haven. Madison won't get any of it because they're in a different congressional district.
Correct.
Okay, now, I won't do anything to hurt anybody's property. I'm not for eminent domain. Carl knows this. Gary knows this. Cindy knows this.
None of us are for.
Charles knows
I mean,
this.
that's,
Okay? Eminent domain is only invoked when there is a danger to life and to, and there's a an issue that really is a safety and a danger to the people of Guilford. Not for a trail. Come on. Be serious. That's all I have to say.
I'd like to just speak to Charles's concerns about having public access from the Madison line down to the Green. I think that's a very valid concern. I think it's a responsibility, actually, of the Board of Selectmen to do as much as we can. And that's why I'd be in favor of a sidewalk. The one question I have is, would a sidewalk be less expensive or more expensive?
Less expensive.
Okay, so, and the second part of it is, can these funds be used for a sidewalk?
It would, I would say no. These appropriations were for this trail. It was there's kind of defined parameters of what a trail would be. There could be, I think, I've seen this in other trails, greenway trails of the state. If you have short sections where the right-of-way is not available and they had to narrow down a trail to get a discrete distance, it would be acceptable. But in this case here, it's been identified as there's room for the trail. I would say that starting with VHB, with running the program, followed by the state, they would not allow money to be just taken from the trails to be used for sidewalk. I think if it was a sidewalk, I think it would have to be a town project.
I had one other question that went with that, but go ahead.
While you're thinking about it, I would just, first of all, I'm happy to withdraw my second for the motion that's on the table, if that's possible, and defer to Cindy's request, which I would second, for tabling this and discussing it. I guess I'm concerned that there are a number of issues that are unclear to a lot of people. I've actually talked to a couple of people along the Route 1 section, and they don't know what is currently proposed, and they would like to see it before it. I mean, they acknowledge that you talked to them and the Shoreline talked to them 2 years ago, but I think the conception of what they thought was going to happen and what you're now proposing is somewhat different, and I think they're entitled to understand what that is. I'm concerned about the cost of maintenance because we're taking this on. I noticed in looking at the Stantec study that this section was was projected to cost $660,000. The price is up about 20%. The rest of it's was suggested to cost close to $5 million without any land acquisition. That's up 20%, that's $6 million. So I mean, the question of where this goes, and I respect Charles' thing. I've said from the beginning, a trail from the Guilford Green or some sort of pathway from the Guilford Green to the Madison Green would be terrific. I don't think that's the Greenway Trails vision. So I mean, part of me says it'd be nice to build this and get that part of it done, but I think there are too many unanswered questions. So if it's possible for me to withdraw my second and defer to a proposal that Cindy apparently is about to make.
Well, I can't unless Charles withdraws his motion.
I'm not withdrawing the motion. If there's no second, there's nothing I can do, but I'm not withdrawing my motion.
I also, I remembered what I was gonna say. The time period of 2 weeks, I don't think it's a time period so much as it is to give us time to maybe have a public meeting.
Right.
Maybe in a bigger venue, where we can dedicate the meeting just to answering questions or hearing concerns about the plan. Because I know if we have a meeting, we have to post it legally, et cetera. So maybe if any motion is made to table, it could include, instead of a 2-week period, time to schedule some kind of a public hearing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I just was,
Yeah.
well, let me just say, Joe, I agree with everything you said wholeheartedly, particularly the eminent domain. A number of us have gone on record by saying that I would only, and it'd be really severe safety issues before I would even consider taking anybody's property. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I think that Joe and I have talked about that, so I agree with everything you said. And I want it clear that I support the Greenway Trail very, very much, and I'm not looking to stand in the way of what you guys have done up to this point, and I think my support is shown. I just feel that a lot has happened in the last couple of years, and I've had conversations with Gary, who was at the meeting in 2014, and I just think it'll help your group if more people understand. I mean, a lot of it is just understanding. I don't see that it's necessarily gonna to obviate what we have in plan in place, but I think the understanding would be a good thing. So I would make a motion that we continue, and in the time, set it for a public hearing, and then get it back on the agenda quickly so that there's no question about moving forward on this project. How's that? Carl, does that work for you?
Okay, so let's see where we are administratively here. You withdrew your second.
I withdrew my
Okay, is there
second.
any other second to that Charles' motion? Okay, motion fails. Make a motion?
To continue, to allow us time to have a public hearing, and then as feasibly as possible, getting it back on our agenda to move the project forward once we get people's understanding level and
You're
have the public
tabling
hearing.
it for what?
I'm tabling it to allow us to have a public
In order
hearing.
to schedule a public.
Not public, yeah,
Legally, yeah.
legally,
Public hearing?
yeah.
Okay.
Can we put a time limit on that?
Yeah.
You can set a date.
60 days, within 60 days?
2
30
months?
days,
No, I
30
think-
days? I'll,
Well, 3 weeks
2
should give
months,
us
you'll
enough.
just walk away from the whole thing.
What?
If you're gonna do 2 months, walk away.
no,
from the
I
whole
didn't
thing.
say, okay, I'm just,
When's our next meeting?
it's
The
2
third?
weeks.
2 weeks.
The third, okay. He might be away, I might be away, so we'll move it to the third, 14 is.
3rd and 14 would be 17?
17.
Joe, shouldn't we have a public hearing that's separate from the regular selectmen's
We could,
meeting?
yeah.
Yeah, because we need to have it in a bigger room.
You know.
So
All right,
maybe
I
I'll
don't
make
think
a
you-
motion that we continue it until the October 17th meeting, which in time between now and then, we will have a public hearing.
Okay, you'll be back by then. Great.
I won't even be gone. I'm going on 19th.
19th, you'll be back, okay.
How's that?
Okay, make your motion for October 17th.
Correct, with a public
Okay, is
hearing
there a
between
second?
now and then.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Did you vote?
Opposed.
Opposed, okay. 4-1. Okay.
Just a clarification. Are we gonna schedule a public hearing for the 17th when we have a selectmen's meeting, or a date
In between now and
at
then.
least by the 17th?
By the
Oh, yeah,
17th.
no, prior to the 17th?
Prior to the
Okay,
17th,
okay, I just,
Okay,
All right, I gotta-
Jim, you'll have all your, any additional information we need.
Sure. I'll have to go through, I was out in the hall, I couldn't hear all the comments, so. if I-
Few other minutes.
Yeah.
I'll call you after.
Okay,
you can take that back. This is the town's, this is Jim's. I'm giving this, I'm gonna make Jim carry this back to his office.
Save our money, okay, thanks. We all chipped in for this.
that's really moot. I mean, you don't, that has
What?
no standing, that's moot. They're not gonna do that.
Yeah, we hope so.
Mike, why don't you cut it for about 5 minutes? Is everybody clear? Okay, 5.1, discuss and take possible action to purchase road salt off the state contract. James, we're back to you again, okay?
It's more mundane issues.
Yeah.
With the road maintenance.
You appreciate it now, huh?
Yeah, that's right. We have 2 salts that we acquire. We have rock salt, which we mix with sand, which is a main component of our winter road maintenance treatment. And then we use treated rock salt up North Guilford, in places where they tend to have icing. 2 sources of the material. We get the rock salt from the state bid process, which was the state extended last year's contract, 15 PSX 0168, and the price remains at $69.93. The second, the treated rock salt, is purchased through the CROG bid. The state does not have a bid for that item, and their bid this year yielded a price of $86.18. I'm sorry. The Public Works Commission approved the purchase of the salts at those prices, so it is recommended the Board of Selectmen authorize the purchase of the rock, 2 sorts of rock salt. Both are under what we estimated to be the cost in our budget, so we're in good shape. The original, we estimated the rock salt to go up to 70 cents, and we estimated the treated salt to be $87 a ton. So we're in good shape in terms of the quantity that we want.
Are there minimums on either of these?
What we've done is we've just carried the same quantity that we've found to be an average. It was 600 tons of rock salt and 700 tons of the treated salt.
Have a motion, please?
I would move the approval of the rock salt and treated rock salt as proposed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we took both of them. Yeah. Okay. All right, 5.3, discuss and take possible action. Approve the purchase of Armand Quarry Stone. What do we need? Discuss and take possible action. Approve purchase of Armand Quarry Stone from Stony Creek Quarry for the Tuttle's Point Road project due to it being the sole source.
Right. Starting October 1st, our permit opens for the elevation of Tuttle's Point Road. In anticipation of that, we look for the purchase of these large boulders, rock from Stony Creek. We've used them both on Chaffinch Island Road and on Old Quarry. It's a very near source of material. Really, there are no, it's almost like a sole source, as it were. So I would recommend the Board of Selectmen approve the purchase of 900 tons of at the price request of $25 per ton.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Jim, we got one more for you here. Right. Discuss and take possible action on the award of bid 5-1617 25-ton capacity triaxle tag along trailer.
Right. This is a trailer that has become, the one we have now is pretty well worn out. We had 4 bids, which I've detailed here. The lowest bid was from HP Fairfield LLC for $24,500. That included the trade-in of our existing trailer. We're giving that up. So this was approved by the Public Works Commission on last Thursday. I would recommend the Board of Selectmen authorize the purchase of the trailer from HP Fairfield as quoted.
So moved, although I will point out that this is $6,200 under the budgeted price, so save us a little money.
Save us a little money.
Motion's been made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure you want to go out there?
Sure. I've been chased by bulldozers.
All right, I'll talk to you later about Bobby.
Okay.
Okay. Park and Rec's Director, Rick Meehan, back from vacation. 6.1, discuss and take possible action to approve amended contract with Malone and McBroom for additional survey work for the Cox Field project. Rick?
Morning.
How you doing?
Good morning. So Malone and McBroom has been doing the design service for us for the Upper Cox project. It's coming along pretty well. It's about ready to accept seed and sod. But the field committee feels strongly that there should be one final survey done up there to just make sure it's graded the proper way for drainage and everything. Right now it's looking pretty good. But Malone and McBroom is proposing coming out for an additional survey before they actually do the seeding and sod work to be sure we have the proper grading for drainage there. There are no under drains. It's all just the way the field is sloped, for the water to run off. And we think it's going to be a big improvement from what it was before, and it's come along pretty well. But anyway, so they want to, field committee believes we should get Malone and McBroom one more time for the final grade topo survey. And this was not part of the original contract with them, and with that we also will get as-built plans, which was not part of the original contract. So the amendment would be an additional $3,500.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Who put the specs out for this?
They were written up by Paul Schmidt. Paul's, an engineer, chairman of the field committee.
It would seem to me that the original specs should have included the inspection and the as-built. I mean, I'm no engineer or architect, but I've been involved with enough building projects to know at least the as-built right, Carl?
Yeah.
You would get.
Well, I looked at the amended, the construction services, and the as-bilt's not listed here. Yeah, it says survey, stakeout, or preparation of as-bilts are listed under exclusions and limitations. And so this is what they're asking for, an additional, the survey, and then the as-built plans.
And who oversaw the, I don't remember, but besides Paul, did his
Construction.
committee oversee those specs before they went out? I know it was standing building, it was a building project, standing building. they
Yeah,
looked
the
at
standing
it.
building was, I think it was maybe a dollar amount, they weren't part of that, but I don't know, Joe.
All right,
It's a while
well,
back since we
I'm
did
not
it.
trying not to be critical here, but just as a
Yeah.
side, in the future, we should look at that. All in favor of the motion on the table?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous, thank you.
Thank you.
6.2, consider to take possible action to purchase grass and seed fertilizer from the state bid. And you all have a copy of a purchase request from Site 1, okay?
Right, and the total should be 8,914.20, is that what you have?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, 88.
88,996.20.
Oh.
914.
I had 8,914.20.
I'm
We're off
looking,
by $18.
Yeah.
transposition error.
Yeah. So it was the seed.
What is the correct amount?
I believe the correct should be 8,914.20. I have,
8,914.20.
seed is 5,526.50. And the fertilizer is 3,387.70.
Okay, that's,
Okay.
the seed's a little bit off.
Okay.
I would move that we approve the purchase of seed under the state bid contract in the amount, we'll call it 8914.20. If it
That is
happens
the
to be
larger amount.
$18 less.
That's the larger amount.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, Rick, thank you.
Thank you.
Appointments and resignations, we have one. Act on a resignation received from David Burkholder from the Marina Commission.
Joe, I would move that we table this. I talked to the chair of the DTC last night, and they were concerned about this, and they think there was an oversight that took place with that discussion between the commission member that was leaving, and then he wasn't leaving, and
Okay.
they appointed somebody, and they never realized that he was on there as an alternate and probably should have had a discussion as to whether he should be moved up. So they would like some time to talk to him and talk to the
Okay.
person that we appointed and see if there's a reconciliation.
Oh, boy, okay. Move the table, to a second?
Second.
Okay, the table. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion table. Okay, 8.1 to 8.3, request for the use of town property.
I would move that we approve the two sign requests as requested and act on the request from Bimler's Bluff to use a portion of the town trails for an event on October 23rd, subject to approval of the Conservation Committee. I talked to the organizer, and I have a string of emails between himself and Kevin as the representative for the Conservation Commission. It's on the agenda for the Conservation Commission. This has been used prior. I don't anticipate that there would be a problem, but it is, I would move that the approval be subject to Conservation Commission approval since they have responsibility for the properties.
Where's Bimbler's Bluff?
Bimblers isn't, but it's just a race that weaves on through Bluffhead and up and down and around and.
Okay, motion's been made, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Correspondence, you have your Public Works monthly reports, they finally got caught up. and the building officials' monthly reports. And I think you also have an annual report in there too.
Yes.
Okay. Committee reports, we are trying to get the Senior Tax Relief Committee to meet and to review the ordinance, as we normally do every few years. We have not had a date set for that. That's all I have to report. Right, Trace, nobody's coming. Okay, that's all I have on there. Anybody else on anything? No. Old business, other than we had a great parade on Saturday, September 17th. It was over an hour. Right, it was over an hour. It was a big parade. I think they had 63 units, so it was a good parade. Fair had a great weekend, I understand. The weather was great.
Fair was great.
And finally getting some rain today. Badly rainy.
The rain held off, thank God.
Under old
Gary?
business.
Yep.
After one of the presentations for, and this is a coincidence, but for Greenway Trails in the northern part of the town, I had asked that we consider sort of a study of what is required for, or what is desired and required for sidewalks / trails in various parts of town, so that we had sort of a comprehensive understanding of what would be desirable. Has there been any progress on that? I think I asked
Jim?
that you would talk to the town planner and maybe Jim and.
Jim is looking into that with the state because we're still getting inquiries into when are we gonna make a decision on the State Street walkway, bikeway, multi-use path, whatever you want to call it. So he's made some inquiries up at the state, and they're looking into it and are going to give us a decision on it, so.
Okay.
Okay.
But I think that, the other side of the question is, what's our need? I mean, what I don't want to get into is build one here and then somebody else says, well, they got one, now I want one. We end up building sidewalks all over the place at a significant cost and a significant maintenance cost.
Yep. We'll follow up on that.
Okay.
Sidewalks. Anything on new business? Okay, I have something to add on new business. We have found a piece of property that we own, which is suitable. It's off East Bear House Road. You guys would be interested in that, to put a 30,000-gallon water tank for firefighting capabilities. Just not east, it's close to East Bear House. It's off Podunk, excuse me. And we'll be embarking on that project in the next couple of months. Okay, and this was something that was part of the commitment or conditions when that development was approved several years ago, back in 2004, 2005.